installation in association with the large installation that's visible on our back wall. And I can't quite remember how you came up with the title and the general concept for the column.
I think that was your fault. We had a site visit. We were talking about the show, what should go where, and you know, I always like to do whatever hasn't been done before. Like if there's a space that seems really beautiful but hasn't necessarily been tackled that often, that's for me. And so you'd mentioned that, and the essential worker concept was something that was ever present in my mind a lot. There's four pieces in the show with this title, Essential Worker. And you'd mentioned that this is the old newspaper building, and these columns have been here. This used to be where the presses were in this room, holding the whole thing up. And the show does look at phrases that are in the news. So it seems fortuitous, serendipitous, ironic. I'm not, you know, that this kind of idea of the concept of the show would then extend into the space in some sort of historical, meaningful way. It just made sense to do something here.
Yeah, that's, you just hit it on the kind of the relationship between this kind of vocabulary of the pandemic that's very present in this exhibition. And so one can imagine that you're creating these works now. These are site-specific works.
Yes.
So they'll be the most recent works in the exhibition. But you've created, for example, 4 previous works with the title Essential Worker.
Yes.
And that is a phrase and a noun and a kind of a title that we've heard so often over the past year.
A label.
Yeah.
A category that brings a lot of discomfort for any number of reasons. I think it's, that phrase is objectionable, depending on who you're talking to, which is why there's so many pieces about it. Like Happy Talk was another one that got a couple of pieces, but that one I felt like it was obvious. It was a one-liner. It had a very specific meaning, but Essential Worker, that one's a little more gray and requires all sorts of cogitation for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, the choice of gold. First of all, can you talk about the medium that you're using here?
Yes, I'm using an exterior grade vinyl tape. This one is a semi-translucent or semi-opaque gold. It's got a paper backing on it. It's something you'd see in car detailing. Sign shops use this stuff. It's a widely available, pretty inexpensive material. It's very forgiving. There's no special skills that are involved with it. It doesn't screw up the walls. I mean, it's all kinds of wonderful to do big things quickly. It also makes these pretty lines. And I tend to work in a very linear way. And it's just well suited. And it comes in lots of colors, not nearly enough, but gold is just a really wonderful color for essential workers. I had first thought there's 4 columns and I thought about making them all sorts of colors of brown. But then quickly came to a limitation in just what the colors are that are available in the material, which is why work should be presented, not just in the studio, but presented, because you have to grapple with the limitations as you do in life. And so with only 1 brown and 1 black available, I thought, well, let's try something different. And gold seems to like bring all the value that's been missing in the general discussion of an essential worker.
I'm going to try to change the view so we can see a little bit more of the column that you're working on.
So this is the B side that you're seeing. There's a, can we bring up the design of Essential Worker? And I can show you how the design wraps around and Here it comes, here it comes. Okay. On this image, as you can see, you'll see that it's separated into vertical columns. So it's one design that's derived from the ASCII values of the letters that form the phrase essential worker. Each one of those values is used to determine to set the value of the edge, the folding edge in the origami design that I've made for this piece. Each one of the columns, it's a wrap design. So each one of the columns is, you know, face A, face B, face C, and face D. And there's 4 columns in the space. So this is the second column, and I'm starting with face B. On the first column, it will start with face A. So when you're in the space, all 4 columns across the face, you can see the entirety of the pattern. But also, if you walk around each column, each individual worker, you see the cohesiveness of the pattern. And in this way, what I'm trying to say is we are each whole within ourselves, but we're integrated into a larger structure, which is still visible and we're still part of it. It's a micro and a macro.
No, but when you speak about patterns and visitors to the exhibition and to your website and Greenhill's website, greenhillnc.org, will receive a little bit of an introduction to your process. But it's an incredibly elegant, abstract language that you use. But it is connected to words and to empirical data. And that the process that you use, you mentioned ASCII code and computer languages to get to the mapping of these patterns is rather complex, but it's so elegant. And when one visits the exhibition and looks at, for example, your paintings, the drawing for the design for this site-specific installation, there is a unity among all of those different works. And is that something that you work on all the time? And I know that there are other processes that you use, but this origami folding pattern is something that's very present, especially in the essential worker pieces.
It is, it is. It is. I was thinking about this on my way over. Why do I care so much about this when there's lots of other encoding methods that I've used? I think it's because it's a structure. It's a narrative that's inside of a structure that you can then do something with, a lot like the structure of our society, a lot like the structure of our government. And these things can either work for us or they can work against us. You know, do the lines move across all facets and connect? For me, in my patterns, they must, because that shows the integrity of the entire structure. And you know, when I work these patterns, I can make sense of things. I can connect the lines. I can feel like I understand something that's complex. And it makes me feel a little safer when yes. I watch the news and I read or hear or see a video clip that's disturbing and distressing to me. And I don't know how to make sense of it, because I know I'm part of the structure of those images that I'm seeing. I'm part of that. I am complicit. I am guilty. I am something. I'm something. I'm not present. I am present. I'm not sure, but I'm trying to just observe. And the show is kind of remnants of my observation.
I had the feeling, you know, seeing the exhibition, which will open on March 12th, in its current state, which is still under construction, that it almost is a landscape of the past year, and that these phrases such as essential worker, no justice, no peace, which is the title of this really, truly monumental tape installation across Greenhill's 96-foot wall, that these are almost landmarks in this kind of map or topography of this time that we have just passed through.
Yes, yes. That reminds me of a thought that I had very early in my career, and it sits there like a seed always. That when the Spanish were coming across the desert in the Southwest, they would drive these big poles into the ground. And then they would get to the other ridge and don't want to get lost in the desert. So they stick another pole in the ground, and then they line up the pole with the one way back there that they put, and then they know they're going in a straight line. And somehow the mess of this structure, the complexity of the problems that we're facing now, I get lost. I don't know how to get out of this deep, dark wood. And so when I put down a piece, I said, okay, all right, I understand this. Here's where I am right now in this complex geography. Now I'm gonna walk a little bit further until I feel like I'm lost again. I'm gonna stick another pole down. And eventually I'm starting to delineate the structure of this larger environment and understanding how I fit, how it can possibly be helpful and supportive and get through better, not just endure. I don't want to have a thought of insufficiency during this time. I don't think that's helpful. That hasn't been helpful.
You know, one thing about the piece that you're currently working on is that it's really made me think about Green Hills Gallery space differently.
Me too. Shall I elaborate?
Yes. Yes.
I have had a long kind of relationship with Green Hill. I've been here many times for various events, and you've done lots of different things. And so when the call came for this space and it said, well, we have all this and what can you do? It was all kinds of wonderful, because you were essentially giving me a mandate to think differently, giving me a mandate to figure out a way to allow for the public to engage with the work online, digitally, and how is that meaningful? And what does it mean to make paintings right now that need physical proximity? And what about making, and we have this example in the show, 2 different projects that actually will not be created without the public involvement in it and submitting their data, so to speak, their answers to how do you feel in 140 characters or less. And the work will be created from their responses to how do you feel. If no one participates, there will be no how do you feel. And I love this idea. The work doesn't get made unless people actually want it, which means it's not useful unless somebody participates.
So how exactly will that happen?
Well, I don't really know. I mean, so we've got some rules and some ideas about it, but you know, how will we actually get there? I don't know exactly, but that's kind of the beauty of this, is that we know we're going to get there, and we're here, and there's this little distance in between, and we're going to figure it out. And at the end, there's going to be some art.
So if you go to Green Hill's Twitter handle for how do you feel, and answer in 140 characters, what will you do with that? What happens next in your process? Oh,
I've got tons of tape and some movable walls here in the space, which we can do accommodate up to 8 designs. So I'll look at the responses and try to do as many as I can. So that every 2 weeks, I think it is, every 2 weeks, the wall images will be changed out. I'll take those letters and the words and convert them to ASCII values. And then, very much like all the other work is created, I'll create an origami pattern where each one of the edge lengths is determined by the ASCII value of the letter, of the answer, line them all up. More letters, you get something more complex. If you just say, I'm okay, it'll be a more sparse pattern with larger shapes. But if you give me all 140 characters, you'll get something more complicated. I'm not quite sure what we're going to see, but I'm excited to do a lot of them and see what comes out of it.
Well, I just participated in a conversation hosted by the Durham Art Guild. And one of the questions was, has the pandemic created possibly opportunities for artists and for the reception of artwork on the part of the viewer or the visitor? And I think that the how do you feel piece is a very interesting example of, you know, something that has never been done here before, where we've actually invited visitors to be really the author of an original artwork produced for them and exhibited in the gallery.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love the idea of not, now I actually don't know what my art's going to look like before, because it's all rule-based work. So the uniqueness of the art, the kind of wonder and curiosity of finding out what the final design is going to be, is something I get to share with other people. And because these will each be individual pieces, they can vary in color. I can make the lines wider or thinner. I mean, it doesn't have to be stylistically the same, which offers me the wonderful opportunity to do a whole lot of work that's temporary, tear it down and do it all over again, which then allows the viewer to get a fresh new experience if they want to just check in next week. It changes the whole nature of what it means to go and visit art, because now you can actually still come in. You can come here physically and see the work, and I hope that everyone does. I've tried hard to make these works here worthy of getting in your car and coming down here. I really hope that you take the opportunity to do so. But if you cannot, or live somewhere else, there's many other ways for you to participate in this show and drive the kind of work that will be physically presented here all throughout the show into June.
Heather, Chris White has a question for you, and that is, this is a good one. Regarding the post in the desert metaphor, have you found yourself putting down a lot more posts recently? Yes.
That is a good question. Oh gosh. I always put down those marks. I think my uncomfortableness has been that it's not a desert. And I've been thinking all this time that I've been driving these poles down into the desert. And now I'm realizing that maybe it's not the desert. Maybe it's a whole different environment. Maybe it's a jungle and I've had it wrong all this time. And maybe what I've been in all this time has been an oasis. And now we got the real world. It's a little bit different now. And I'm happy that I have some measurements, but I don't know that that offers me much more safety. It's kind of like having there before. Well, the roadmap's helpful. That's helpful, but I don't, you know, I'd rather have it than not have it. But I still feel really uncertain about the future and what it means. But at the same time, though, shows like this and the fact that I can make work and that Green Hill's still open and as are many other art venues, that brings me hope. Lots and lots of hope and faith that artists are going to still be making art. I know I have, irregardless of whether or not I'm going to show or not. I keep doing it, and I know all my friends are doing it too. And places like Green Hill and all the others that are still open are going to be here because it's their mandate to be so. It's their movement to be that way. It's how they're healthy. And working together in a different way, maybe that's the new pole in the sand, is that there was a way that Edie and I would have worked together in the past, and indeed we have. And that laid the basis for my belief that whatever happens now, I can have faith in it because I know that they're going to work hard to fulfill their mandate and help me fulfill my own objectives. So there's a lot of trust here. And that's very healing to me at this time, trust. That was a good question. Thank you for that question. I'll be thinking about that one.
I think that touches on what you were saying about, and I think that's something that's quite striking about your work is this kind of idea that if one can measure precisely the world around us, that it gives us a semblance of control. But I've read statements where, and I think a lot of people in general might feel this, that data per se can be very confusing these days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, and when I started with these works, I was collecting numbers all over the place, and they quickly became, I don't want to say irrelevant or insignificant, but they lacked the emotional charge that it should. You should be shocked to your core to hear that more than 500,000 people have died of this disease in this country. Shocked. And it is shocking, but it doesn't, after a while, you get numb to it. And it wasn't something I wanted to make work around. Instead, I wanted to look at these other things. There were so many lies, so many facts you just couldn't believe in. I feel like I'm going to go off the I can't even remember the question now. I get so upset about thinking about all the lies and the facts that you couldn't trust. You just couldn't trust the story that was coming to you, ever. And you still can't. You have to be aware. I mean, I make propaganda just as much as the propaganda that I consume on the TV or on the radio, or however you consume it. It's somebody's message, and this happens to be mine. This is my propaganda, and I hope you all buy it. Like, buy into this propaganda. Art matters. Artists are essential workers, and art can be healing and hopeful.
Well, there's many aspects of this exhibition that are incredibly hopeful, I think, and one of them is the one that you're working on. These multifaceted works on these columns that are actually supporting this space, which has housed so much wonderful contemporary work by North Carolina artists over the years, and will continue to do so.
Yay!
I'm not sure where we are in our
I'm going to keep laying tape. I will, and if anybody has any questions, observations, anything that you want to ask, I'm here for you.
I wonder if it would be helpful to see one of the drawings. I wonder if we can see up close.
Which drawings?
The maquettes for the side of each column.
Oh yeah, those are, yeah, sure. So there's a question about how did this get from a design this big onto a column that's, I don't remember exactly, but these are about 2 feet wide, and I believe it's about 11 feet tall. And there's 4 of them. So how do you go from something this tiny to something this large? Hold on, hold that thought. All right, so it's always a little different. Sometimes I use, like on the large one, mural in the back, I use a lot of laser levels to help me measure angles. But on the columns, that's more difficult because it's just only this very shallow space, and there's a lot of room for error with a laser level, and more difficult. So what I did is I made the image really large in Photoshop, and then chopped it up into little, 8.5 by 11 sheets, and taped them all together until I had one giant pattern here. I can get it up close so you can see. One giant pattern. Oh, okay.
Put this on your pocket.
All right.
Can I put the mic on here?
Up here. Okay, right there. All right, I'm getting mic'd up. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And so then once I've got this, I had this brilliant idea that I would use a pounce wheel and some chalk like for quilting, you know, like they do to transfer a pattern, and put it up on the wall and I'd pounce it. It's a brilliant idea, right? Totally didn't work. So I tried it and, you know, I ended up tearing holes in the paper. I put it up, I got chalk everywhere. I mean, it was a disaster, really, truly. So, but I did try it early so I could fail and still hit the mark, you know? So now what I'm doing is I'm poking holes where all the lines, so like say like this junction right here, I'll poke a hole there and like in like this one, and then I'll hang the thing up and make little marks, and then I'll just connect the dots. So, you know, I just try to make it as easy and foolproof as it can be. And then once the tape is up there, I have to kind of, you know, massage it into submission to get all of the stripes to be continuous. Because again, I have to say, the stripes have to be continuous for me. They've got to, that's the rule. Got to have a rule, right? And so that's mine. The stripes have to go across each one of the facets one time and only one time. And then they must connect all throughout. There can't be like a dead end. So once I'm done with this one, I'll go and do the next space and do the next one and the next one, and then hope by the time I get from side D to side A that they will connect. And if they don't, then I'll be, you know, making them connect, you know, like you do for any other art. You just kind of get it to a point of resolution.
So Heather, I have a question from Ron and Lynn Gordon. How long does it take you to create a typical tape installation?
Let's see, the No Justice, No Peace, which is 96 feet long and 11 or 12 feet tall. I did the drawing in one day, which I was very excited about. I usually am incapable of doing that, but I got lucky. And just using a protractor. And then it took a few more days with the help of a friend and colleague to help me tape it out. And we got the bulk of it done in another 2 days. And there's still one tiny little corner that's being problematic. And so I've slept on it and I've talked to it, and I'm still not clear why I have 3 lines coming this way and 4 lines coming this way, because they won't meet up, and there's my rule and it's being broken. And it does make me somewhat irritable when my art will not cooperate. So yesterday I tore it out on this one corner, and there's still just this tiny little bit, and that part of it has taken days to accomplish and is still not finished. The rest of it was really easy, but that one last little square foot, it's really it's hard for me.
So I
don't know that. I mean, some projects have taken 2 weeks or more, working every day. Some can be done in just 3 or 4 days. Something like the columns with a really wide tape like this, I imagine uninterrupted, I could do a column in a day all by myself, which would then take 4 days to get all 4 of the columns done.
So Kimberly Richter would like to know if you could tell us a little bit more about your past experience with Greenhill and how Greenhill's influenced this collaboration.
Okay, I would love to talk about that. I moved here from Asheville, not to Greensboro, but to Durham from Asheville. Gosh, I can't remember. Oh, it's been a while. It's been a good long while. Edie, how long have you been here? 15. She's been here 15 years. So I think it must have been pretty soon right after she was here, maybe a couple of years, right? Yeah. And I came to this event where artists gave, they put together a call and said, come and give a 10-minute presentation of your work and see other artists doing the same. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I mean, everybody needs to know how to give a presentation of their work. That's good practice. And, but the best part was seeing 49 other presentations by artists that live in North Carolina. That was amazing for me. And what it did was make me just like, I was taking notes. Some people had their act together. They knew exactly how to do a 10-minute presentation, and I was just not there. So I made notes just on the technicalities of how to do something better. But then just drawing inspiration from how people talked about their work, the quality of their photography, how they physically presented, the subject of their work, the format. I had no idea there were so many people working in glass, so many people working in ceramics. I mean, you name it. I don't typically run into them very often in my world. And so I walked away from that day feeling like Greenhill had done me an enormous service, really lifting up my own understanding of how large and broad and diverse my own community of artists is. And from there, I somewhat adopted that attitude and got to know, started feeling a little more courageous about being new here, and started participating more and getting to know more artists and going to more shows and going to more artist things. I mean, I think I was just kind of afraid. And then I felt all brave all of a sudden. So I started doing that. And then, and they kept doing these Pechakucha, that's how you say it, right? These same sort of events. It was a series. And so all my friends were kind of coming through the mill of doing this. And we're all talking about Greenhill. In Durham, we're talking about Greenhill. And whenever there was a great show, we get in the car and come down. I joined their newsletter immediately, been on their newsletter since the very first day for over 10 years. And then I had a show here. I was invited to be part of a show called Word Maps. And after that show, that was the first time I'd had anybody write thoughtfully about my work that was qualified to do so. And I felt seen. It was hugely important to my own sense of confidence about the work I was making, because, you know, some of my stuff is rather esoteric, or people believe that it is, perhaps. And so there's not often a door into it, you know. People say, oh, it feels cold, or they don't understand it. But, you know, Edie was like, yeah, what is that? And she just wanted to look at it and then write something about it, thoughtful. And I thought, oh my God, look at this. I actually make work that matters enough for somebody to form some thoughts about it and put some words together about it, and even invite me to be part of a show with other artists that are considering words. And I felt like I belonged here, and that I had chosen right for myself. You know, like you choose to do this life. Nobody chooses to be an artist. Who would choose that? It's ridiculous to choose to be an artist. I mean, it's ridiculous. So being here and having these multiple experiences with Greenhill has really kind of buoyed me up at critical times when I very easily could have just put all my supplies down and gone for some other line of work, but decided not to. Decided that maybe Edie was right, and maybe I should keep doing this. And so I hope to continue a long relationship with Greenhill, and indeed foster relationships like this with every art venue that I work with, because I think it's important that artists feel this connection with people that are presenting their work, because it really does complete your work. You can't finish your work unless it's presented in some way. Long answer. Very sorry for a very long answer.
That was a great answer. So here's another question that I think is going to be fun for you to answer. This is about your solo shows, and that you also do collaborations with dancers, video and sound artists. Do you prefer one over the other?
No. You mean like collaborating versus not collaborating, or
let's see.
Audio?
That's a good question. So if who wrote this? So the question is, I know that you've done many solo shows, but I also know you do collaborations with dancers, video and sound artists. Do you prefer one? Maybe do you prefer working with dancers, video and sound artists over like one or the other?
You know,
Okay. Wait, here's a clarification. Do you prefer working solo over collaborations?
Okay, yeah. No, I don't, but they are different. You know, some nights you really, really just want to eat a frozen burrito, and other nights and plow down on the couch. And sometimes you want to get in the kitchen and make something for yourself. And I think you know, I mean, I could relate it to that, like a consumptive thing. When I work with people that do dance or sound or whatever it is that I can't do, I'm an incredibly curious person. I try to learn as much as I can. And the best way to learn things is directly from somebody showing you. Well, I mean, at least for me. And it also just magically extends my work into temporal spaces. When you think about something that, like dance and music in particular, they don't have longevity. A painting is a painting. It's on the wall, it'll be there for hundreds of years, or if it's taken care of. But a dance or a piece of sound, it happens, and you can't miss it. I mean, you have to be paying attention. You must pay attention. With a painting, you can just kind of walk by, oh, yeah. But with music, you can't do that, and neither can you with dance. You have to experience it. You have to be present. And the people that I found, I've been very fortunate that they don't see my work as just background for what they're doing. We integrate together and try to figure out how my visuals and pathways and other concepts can inform their work and extend their work as well. So in this way, we're all getting something that we need. We're feeding each other without consuming too much. I think about birds at a bird feeder. I've spent a lot of time looking at my bird feeder in my backyard during the pandemic. And one of the things I noticed is that they're not greedy. They don't take so much that their neighbors don't have anything to eat. And when they're together at the feeder, it gives them also safety in numbers, even though they're of different species. So I think to myself that whatever it is that we're curious about is the seed that's in the feeder. And there is plenty of seats at the feeder. And I absolutely love to sit up on my feeder and have a lovely blue jay come or a cardinal come and sing their song for me. And then I can respond, and we share seed, and you know, and some art's made, and off you go. And then the next time you do it again, and you learn things each time about working with each other. You learn something about yourself. You know, art happens that I just never would have guessed some of the things that I've gotten into ever because of what other people bring to the table. I heartily recommend it. But I also love being in the studio and spending like these 9 months of making paintings when no one has seen them except for me and my son. And that's been a wonderful time too, because then I have to say, it doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter that nobody's going to see this. And I was thinking, you just have to make these because you want to make them, because they're important for you to make them. Don't worry about where they're going to be presented, you know, or anything else. Just make the things you want to make. And I don't think I'd ever really had that freedom before, because there's always been a reason to be making work. There's a show coming, there's somebody with a project, there's a deadline, there's a grant application, so you need to complete that thing, or, you know, there's always a reason to make art that has to do with something other than because I need it. And this time has been, all of it's gotten stripped away. There weren't any opportunities. There was no money. There was only lots of cognitive dissonance and a broken heart and just like being in the studio trying to feel better. And so I made work, and it made me feel better. So I do kind of love that. It's like self-soothing. I don't know. And that's different than when you work with a collaborator. You don't get the same sense. I mean, there's some healing through that, but it's not the same as being truly self-reliant and making a thing that doesn't, you know, a painting that exists in your studio, if it never leaves your studio, it has zero function in the world, zero. No one experiences it, no one will see it. It is of use to no one else other than yourself. And that made me feel shame. And I had to think about that. You know, it wasn't good enough for me to accept that I wanted to make paintings because I wanted to make them, and that's it. And now I've kind of put that to rest. And there's something very freeing about being sovereign over your work in such a way that I hope that once this time is over and I can collaborate again, that I can then bring this personal growth to my large.
I've got another question from Kate Roach. What was your first installation like, and how have your installations changed since?
My first tape installation, I assume we're talking about the tape installations. I had a big shift in my work. I'd been making work for 20 years prior to that, but had never done tape. So it was in 2015, was the very first time I did a tape installation. And it was at the Carrick in Durham for a show named Kin. And there was a big hurdle. And the hurdle was you have to put the entire show up in a 24-hour period, and you must take it down in a 24-hour period. And I had it in mind that I wanted to do a wall drawing, and they had a wall that was 27 feet long. And I had to figure out how to do that. And I went through lots of different ideas and was thinking in terms of very traditional materials. You know, can I draw it with a pencil? Can I use spray paint? Can I use a roller? You know, I mean, I wasn't thinking about tape at all. And every time I try an experiment, I realized that, you know, I wasn't going to get it done in 24 hours. It'd be a pain in the butt to take it down. I mean, it's like, no. And then boom, there came tape. And I got a bunch of friends together and we ordered some pizza, got a bunch of ladders. I measured the angles out with a protractor and some string and some tape. I would tape one piece of string in the corner and tape another one up there and measured the angle with a little plastic protractor. I mean, that was how it was done. And it took us 12 hours to do that. And I think there was about 7 of us that had hands on it. And it felt very basic. I remember that time as there were really long lines in it that were hard to get straight. And so we were pairing up with each other to do these long lines. And it just became an exercise of repetitively drawing a line with another person. And that was a huge, like, hello, you need to collaborate more, Heather. You really like collaborating. Drawing a line, a straight line with another person is a lot more difficult than you might think that it is. And then to do hundreds of them so that they all flow in the same angle is even more challenging. And when people are doing it, we all just kind of go speechless with each other and just zen out and get into a meditative state and just flow on down the wall. And it's like kind of creating a sand painting. You know, it's very slow, it's very methodical and sure and steady until the last grain is down. And with no fanfare really at any one point. It's just nice and steady all the way through. And over the years, I've just simply refined the process. So I don't use string anymore. I use laser levels and do that if I can. I still have a little tiny protractor. And in fact, I've got a little tiny paper one that I've made to go into corners. And it's just on a little piece of yellow paper. You know, I kind of trick out my own tools for this job. And other than that, it's just cutting blades. It's super, super simple. And so none of that has really changed. I've tried other tapes. I've ended up with vinyl. Vinyl works well, and masking tape, and pretty much stayed with those. Because duct tape is too sticky, and Mylar tape is shiny for the first day or two, and then it gets all foggy. I mean, you know, so I've tried lots of different experiments with materials and surfaces, but essentially it hasn't changed a whole lot. I've just got better at not making the same mistakes over and over again.
So Heather, if I have a question.
I'm not taking questions from you, just the general public today. You can submit your question in writing. I'm kidding, I'm smiling.
So I am trying to figure out how your mind works. I'm sure that a lot of people are Just,
can you let me know when you find out?
well, so I was reading your bio and you start with Heather Gordon is the daughter of a financial analyst and a logistician. I can't even say that word. And so where did this all start for you? Did you always love math? I'm just amazed at your process.
I don't know that I'm good at math. I would say that I'm fairly good at a lot of things. And so I've got a wide berth of moderate skills. So at first, when I went to school, I was in for pharmaceutical research. I was thinking I wanted to go into AIDS research. You know, I won't give you the long drawn out story, but essentially I had a crisis, you know, at 3 a.m. and called home and said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I got to be an artist and I'm really sorry. And then I shifted over and ended up having to tack on an extra year on my BFA so I could, you know, get it into art, because it had been in sciences and then it was into architecture. And then I finally, it was like architecture was so funny. It was like I was compromising. Well, you know, it's kind of artistic and I could maybe make some money. So, you know, and I'm like, okay, just, you know, just stop that. Just do what you need to do. And my parents who are in the audience today, were incredibly supportive and always have been. And I cannot underscore the value of that enough. If you are a parent of a child that has creativity and wants to go into a creative field, consider being as supportive as you can, because boy, is it easy to want to stop. It's very easy. The world is very largely against creative people because we're also self-employed and for the most part. And it's a very, very hard row to hoe, as are many. I'm not that I'm complaining, but parents being supportive is like, oh my God, it's such a best. I love you guys. You're there. Ron and Lynn Gordon right there. I see you. Thank you for being here today. I see a question down there, but I don't know if that's the same one.
Heather, I've got a comment. Something comes to mind that you can look up on YouTube. I saw it for the first time when I was in the 4th grade. It was a little short film by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer called The Dot and the Line, a romance in lower mathematics. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's charming, maybe somewhat dated.
I'll watch that. I will absolutely love to watch that.
It has everything. Well, it has a lot to do with what you're about, I think. I think you'd enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you. I will watch that for sure. The Dot and the Line.
Yes.
Right? Okay. You know, I realized that I didn't answer that question because I went off on the trail of my parents being here. You know, I'm so excited. The original question was, how did I get from being in science to being in this mathy thing that I do in art? And I didn't really fully answer that question. So if you don't mind, I'd like to back up a little bit. I had at one point thought that I might want to go into computer graphics and work perhaps at a video game company, which is my other love. I love video games. And so I went back to school at UNCA for 2 years, and I was cherry picking courses in computer graphics and mathematics, and absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, I think like, you know, mathematics, like arithmetic was never really my bag. But when we got to computer science and we're doing assembly language, I was all kinds of making sense to me. And when we're looking at the, we'd have labs every week, and I would name my variables according to the characters in famous books. And so I was doing this assembly language programming, and I had a variable named Ahab and one named Starbuck. And the guy next to me, who was probably 18 or 19, he did not know who Ahab was. And I was struck at that moment by the fact that you could put something in a legible, readable way and people not have a door into it. They can't penetrate the meaning of the thing. They can't, and it's not so much that they haven't had the experience, they don't have a key. There's no way to get the door open. If you don't know assembly language, you're not going to be able to read it. If you don't know, if you take the first 550 characters of Moby Dick and you convert it all to binary and stick it on a page, you've done it in a readable fashion, but I'm not a computer, I can't read that. And so I love the idea that information is illegible, even though it's fact-driven and it's written very concisely and methodically, it is still propaganda. It is designed to do one and only one thing. And that's, you know, sometimes it's designed to lock you out and keep you from accessing whatever it is that you want to know. And I think that was the my initial curiosity. That was what got me to go down that rabbit hole. And then it ended up spiraling down into all these other things from there. But that was the initial thing, was that one guy not knowing who Ahab was. That was like, I thought about that for weeks.
Question that follows on that, which is with your facility with computer science, what makes you want to use a pencil and a regular piece of paper and spend hours and hours drawing and tracing lines on just a piece of paper when you could, for example, be working within the context of digital art and creating, you know, virtual lines in space, as opposed to actually taking the time to incise lines onto, for example, the canvas of essential worker over there and trace them with a ruler, thousands of lines.
Right. Yeah. And the rigor of repeating a physical task, I've worked in the digital world, and honestly, I have a lot more interest now in making digital work because of blockchain technology becoming more part of the art world. That is becoming really interesting. It's something I'm going to be doing more of. But there's something about the repetitive sound of drawing, that when that pencil goes across, even as thin as that line can be, I am very aware that there's a right side of the line and a left side of the line. Like it could be as thin as a hair, but I am so focused on it. I can see the little tiny undulations on either side of that line. And there's something about being so deeply focused into something that small and controllable. It's just me with a pencil and a straight edge and just going, yoop, 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 over and over again for hours. It's incredibly mind-bending. You go off into, it doesn't even feel like you're physically in your body at that point. When it's been so long, you don't really have a sense, you know, like, when was the last time I blinked? I don't know. And, you know, it's gotten dark outside. Hours have passed. I'm hungry. Oh, because you haven't eaten in 8 hours. There's that kind of loss of tangibility that's so, I find that so healing. I love that. I love the feeling. I feel so relaxed after I worked all day long. It gets very strangely quiet. I'm just going to say that, very strangely quiet, because there's no actual audience. I can see all of your lovely faces there, but you can't hear people. You can't see them. And I so look forward to that being a difference here very soon, where we can be in the same room with each other on occasion and see each other reacting to each other.
And the exhibition will be opening on March 12th to visitors, and in the space, which is actually 5,000 square feet. It is very, very easily for people to be socially distant.
Oh yes, yes, very big space. You can be in either end, and you wouldn't even know there was someone else in here.
And we are also moving the exhibition beyond the gallery walls as well as within, with certain of the projects actually having plans to be exhibited in different parts of Greensboro and perhaps beyond, including the Handshake project.
Yes.
And can you speak a little bit about that before we have to?
Sure. Yes. So a quick plug for it. This is one of those pieces that I'd really love to see made, but I can't make it. You have to make it. Other people have to make it. The idea is came to me the very first month that this all happened. I really miss a good old handshake, you know, like when you make a deal with somebody and you shake on it, like that matters. At least it does to me. And there's something, you know, it's an agreement, you know, it's also weapons free. You can't hold a weapon at the same. That's why people shake with their right hands, because I looked this up. Wikipedia that thing up. It's really interesting. The history of the handshake and where it came from and why we started doing it. It was absolutely a sign of alliance, of agreement, even despite our differences, to say, we are in this together, we've got each other's backs, and I've really missed it. So the idea was, could we not just get together in our homes and throw up a white sheet somewhere and do a little handshake and then put clips together of everybody essentially being pod partners with each other and getting through this damn pandemic, you know? And it's just, whatever comes, what may, whoever is in your pod is in your pod for the duration. And it's, you know, it was like a cruel game of musical chairs that happened here. You just got kind of stuck where you are and you got to do stuff. And you've got to rely on the people around you. And so when you can't do a handshake, it's all just words. And I need the physical thing. I need to press my skin against somebody else's and look them in the eye and say, I'm with you. And hear them say, I'm with you. And know that I can trust them. And my thought was that once this is over, we'll have, you know, hundreds of people shaking hands, showing, what's the word I'm looking for? Where we're all together. Solidarity, yes, we're expressing solidarity, and that the work, by combining everybody's individual handshakes together, we see this solidarity of oneness, of like this will to continue. I think a lot of times it's like, can we get through this? Can we get through this? Well, hell yes, we can. We've been getting through it all this time with each other. You know, it hasn't been graceful. It hasn't been beautiful. It hasn't even felt good, but we're getting through it. And because we've shook the hand of some people that are in our circles, whatever that circle is, and we're getting through together. So the piece is meant to celebrate that. Thank you for everybody that came today. I'm incredibly grateful that you have all signed in to Zoom and been present for this moment. It means a lot to me and to Green Hill and to the work, so thank you.
Glad to be here. Right, bye.
Heather will be in the studio for the next days from 1 to 2 o'clock.
Yes.